Hello, students. We'll start with our new session for the next semester. We are talking about microeconomics here, and we are going to discuss the first chapter, that is money. And so I'll just quickly give you an introduction of myself. My name is Professor Yogesh Ji Nagpal. I am the founder and CEO of Ed Connections as a startup. So we're going to start the first chapter here. So we'll see what do you mean by the term money. So money is defined as whatever you have as assets, property, and resources, which is owned by someone or something, that is wealth. So anything that you own, that is your asset, that is your property, it is owned by you or owned by someone else. Any kind of a wealth is categorized under the term money. Now we look at what are the functions of money. So there are primarily three category of functions. One is primary functions, the other is secondary functions, and the third is contingent functions. Under primary functions, we want to understand it is medium of exchange and measure of value. So what is money? You all are aware of money. You all possess money in some form. You might be owning money in terms of coins, or you might be having money in terms of printed paper notes, paper currency. So it is used as a medium of exchange. If you want to do a transaction, if you want to purchase something, you have to give that paper, or you have to give that those coins to get something in exchange. So it is functioning as a medium of exchange. The next part is measure of value. Now it gives us a number. If I say that you want a cup of tea, so I cannot tell you that, okay, give me a cup of tea, okay, in exchange of, let's say, a glass of water. I cannot say that. So need to have some kind of a measurement, some kind of a number. So money does that function for us. It measures and it creates a value. So it is very easily identifiable that if you want a cup of tea, you have to pay, let's say, rupees 10 for a cup of tea. So now it has a value. The product will have a value. So these are the two most important functions of money that comes under primary functions, that it works as a medium of exchange or measure of value. Then we have secondary functions. Now, what are secondary functions of money? It is standard of deferred payment, store of value, and transfer of value. So, if you want to make a payment later, it is only possible with the help of money. Deferred payment means late payment. It can only be done with the help of money. You can talk to the person who you have from whom you have purchased a commodity, and you can tell him that I'll pay you the money later. How can you say that you can pay someone later? Just because you have money. So one of the secondary functions of money is that it can be used for a deferred payment or a late payment. Second function of money is it has some store of value. So let us say if you keep you are aware of US dollars. So if you keep 100 US dollars, okay, slowly the value of US dollar will increase. So that means it has a storage capacity. You can store money. Transfer of value. You can also transfer money someone else to someone else with the help of just exchanging that. You can give the currency to someone and someone else can have it. So these are the secondary functions of money. Then we have contingent functions of money. Contingent means emergency. Okay. So money is a basis of credit. So if you want to give or take credit, you need to have money. What you gonna give credit for. Distribution of social income. So with the help of money, we come to know who is rich, who is middle class, who is poor class, because the income gets distributed. So money will help you to understand who has more money, who has less money. General form of capital. It is a capital only. It can be invested. It can be used to increase, you know, increase production, to increase products. So money is a major participant in increasing of the products. And maximum benefit, so money gives you that maximum benefit advantage. You once you have money, you feel that you have the highest advantage. So these are the functions of money. Okay, now we talk about quantity theory of money. Quantity theory of money also assumes that quantity of money in an economy has a large influence on its level of economic activity. So a change in the money supply results in either a change in the price levels or a change in the supply of goods and services, or both. In addition, the theory assumes that changes in the money supply are the primary reasons for changes in spending. So, um, so it is very plain and simple. Quantity theory of money is that the how much ever money you have, how much ever quantity of money you have, with that we come to know what kind of economic activity is going on in that particular country. So if there is a lot of economic activity, there are a lot of transactions happening here in India, we'll be able to collect a lot of money, and then we'll be able to supply it back into the economy. If there is more amount of transactions, if there is more amount of uh, economic activity, only then more transactions are possible. um, Change in money supply results in either a change in price levels or change in supply of goods and services, or both. So if the money supply is less, uh, the price levels will get impacted, things will get expensive, and even the goods and services will be supplied in that particular manner. The basic assumption is that um, basic assumption is that money supply decides the changes in prices or changes in spendings. So this is the quantity theory of money. We now look at quantity theory of money in more detail. The quantity theory of money proposes that the exchange value of money is determined like any other good, with supply and demand. So how we see any product has a supply and a demand, even money has some supply and some demand. And the basic equation for quantity theory is called the Fischer equation. Okay, because it was developed by American economist Irving Fisher. In its simplest form, it looks like uh, M of V is equals to P of T, which is M stands for money supply, V stands for velocity of the circulation, that is the number of times money changes hands. So the number of times money moves from one place to another is called as velocity. P stands for average price level, T stands for volume of transactions of goods and services. So this is a very basic formula for quantity theory of money. Now we talk about money supply as a whole. See, in macroeconomics, the money supply or money stock refers to total volume of money held by the public at a particular point in time in an economy. There are several measures available for quantifying money supply, but standard measures usually include currency in circulation and demand deposits. So depositors easily accessed assets on the books of financial institutions. So in macroeconomics, this we are studying the subject of macroeconomics. Money supply means the total amount of money which is there with the people, with the public of the country at a particular time. Um, so you can define money in the manner you want, but it depends upon the demand deposits that are there. So when you go and open an account in the bank and you deposit money into the bank, okay, that is called as a demand deposit, which means whenever you want, you can withdraw that money. So how do we come to know how much money is there in India? Just see how much money is kept in the savings account and the fixed deposit and the recurring deposit of the whole country, and you come to know that that is the kind of money that is there in our economy. So whatever money is kept as a deposit is the money for the economy. That is the money supply. So what determines money supply? How do you come to know that uh, you have higher money supply or greater money supply? So there are a few points. One is the required reserve ratio, then level of bank reserves, then public's desire to hold currency and deposits, high powered money and money multiplier, or there are other few factors. So how to know how much money we have, what is the money supply? Now, the required reserve ratio is an important term. The required reserve ratio, or the minimum cash reserve ratio, or the reserve deposit ratio is an important determinant of money supply. An increase in the required reserve ratio reduces the supply of money with commercial banks, and a decrease in required reserve ratio increase the money supply. So it's very simple. This is a ratio, reserve ratio, which each bank has to compulsorily maintain. So if suppose I am a bank and I have a lot of people who are depositing money in my bank, and I have, let's say, 10 customers depositing 100 rupees each. So 100 multiplied by 10, I have 1000 rupees. Now the Central Bank of India, that is Reserve Bank of India, will tell me that you need to keep 20% in safe with you, and rest you can give as loan. So now I have 1000 rupees. Out of that 1000, 20% I can keep, that is 200 rupees, and 800 rupees I can supply in form of a loan. So the required reserve ratio, if the required reserve ratio reduces, okay, so then automatically what happens, the money supply will increase. Now suppose the central bank is telling to keep a ratio of 20%. Okay, now if the central bank tomorrow tells, okay, reduce that ratio to 10%, which means now I can give a loan of 900 instead of 800. But suddenly, if the central bank says now you need to keep a reserve ratio of um, 30%. So if the reserve ratio increases to 30%, now I have to keep a 300 rupees with me, and 700 rupees will be given to um, outside people as a loan. Okay. Now the level of bank reserves. The level of bank reserves is another determinant of the money supply. Commercial bank reserves consists of reserves on the deposits with the central bank and currency in their tills or vaults. It is the central bank of the country that influences the reserves of commercial banks in order to determine the supply of money. The central bank requires all commercial banks to hold reserves equal to a fixed percentage or both time and demand deposits. So, beyond a reserve ratio, there is another bank reserve ratio which we have to maintain. So there are two ratios which we have to maintain for both the reserves. Our money gets stuck as a bank. Our money is getting stuck, and we can supply money at a lower rate because we don't have enough money to supply. We have to keep some reserves, like the required reserve ratio and the bank reserve. So we have to keep couple of reserves. Public's desire to hold currency and deposits. Now, people's desire to hold currency or cash relative to deposit in commercial banks also determines the money supply. If people are in the habit of keeping less in cash and more in deposits with the commercial banks, the money supply will be large. So, if let's say a city has a few people who are not interested in keeping money with the bank, so the money supply will reduce. But if more and more people are willing to keep money with the bank, the money supply increases. High powered money and the money multiplier. The currency practice is to explain the determinants of money supply in terms of monetary base or high powered money. High powered money is the sum of commercial bank reserves and currency notes and coins held by the public. High powered money is the base for expansion of bank deposits and creation of the money supply. Supply of money varies directly with the changes in the monetary base and inversely with the currency and the reserve ratio. Okay, so what is high powered money? Commercial bank reserves, whatever is there in the banks and whatever is there with the people in their hands. Combined is called as high powered money and money multiplier. Now, I'll give you a very simple example of money multiplier. If I uh, give you 10 rupee note, if I give 10 rupee note to, let's say, Mr. A, and I tell him, okay, sell me a pen. So he sold me a pen. He has that 10 rupees. So for me, there was a transaction of 10 rupees. For him also, there's a transaction of 10 rupees. Now that same 10 rupees he'll give to someone else, probably, to buy two pens, because he's bought one pen for 5 rupees. To Mr. C, to, let's say to Mr. B. So Mr. B comes into transaction. For him, it happened a transaction of 10 rupees, but for Mr. A, now it has happened transaction of 20. So the same money is being used for multiple times and the transaction keeps increasing. This is called as money multiplier. So this helps to understand what is money supply. A 10 rupee note has a capacity of being creating a transaction of 1000 rupees also. If the how many times it get exchanged, it depends upon that. And there are some other factors too. The money supply is a function not only of high powered money determined by monetary authorities, but of interest rates, income, other factors. The latter factor changes the proportion of money balances that public holds as cash. Changes in business activity can change the behavior of banks and the public and thus affect the money supply. Hence, money supply is not only an exogenous controllable item but also an endogenously determined one. So it is not only an external item, it is an internal item too, because there are other activities like interest rates, income, proportion of money which the people have, and whether they want to keep the money in the bank or not. So yeah, this is where we end this chapter, that is money. I'll quickly run through what we have discussed. We've discussed what is the definition of the term money, what are functions of money, what is quantity theory of money. We looked at a formula also for that, that is MV is equals to PT. Discussed about money supply, what are the determinants. There are a couple of reserves. Then there is public's desire to hold currency and deposit. We looked at high powered money and money multiplier and other factors. So this is where we end our first chapter. We'll move to the next topic for this particular subject, that is inflation. So inflation, in India we call it as महंगाई. So that's what inflation is. Inflation refers to the rise in the prices of most goods and services of daily or common use, such as food, clothing, housing, recreation, transport, consumer staples. Inflation measures the average price change in a basket of commodities and services over time. The opposite and rare fall in the price index of this basket of items is called deflation. Inflation is indicative of the decrease in purchasing power of a unit of country's currency. This is measured in percentage. So inflation means when there's a rise in price of commodities. Commodities could include everything: food, clothing, shelter, housing, recreation, transport. So when everything becomes expensive, that is called as inflation. The opposite of inflation is deflation, when everything becomes cheap. Now, if you look at today, the petrol prices have crossed somewhere 100 rupees per liter. Now, that is the effect of inflation. When inflation is high, the prices of commodities will be high, and it is measured in terms of percentage. Now, there are a few types of inflation. We look at those. Creeping inflation, that is somewhere between 1 to 4%. When the rate of inflation slowly increases over time, for example, inflation rate rises from 2% to 3% to 4% a year. Creeping inflation may not be immediately noticeable, but if creeping rate of inflation continues, it can become increasing problem. So creeping, it means slowly it increases between 1 to 4%. Then we have walking inflation. When inflation is in single digits, less than 10%. At this rate, inflation is not a major problem, but when it rises over 4%, central banks will increasingly concerned. Walking inflation may simply be referred to as moderate inflation. This is moderate level inflation. The first part of inflation is low because it is just up to 1%, but in walking inflation, the inflation rises beyond 4%. Running inflation, that is between 10 to 20%. When inflation starts to rise at a significant rate, it is usually defined as a rate between 10 to 20% a year. At this rate, inflation is imposing significant costs of economy and could easily start to creep higher. Very high rate, somewhere between 10 to 20%, it's a running inflation. And finally, it is galloping inflation. Galloping means there's a country called as Venezuela. in the Southern America, they have an inflation rate of over 500%. Okay, so that's a galloping inflation. This is an inflation rate between 20 to 1000%. At this rapid rate of price increase, inflation is a serious problem and will be challenging to bring under control. Some definitions of galloping inflation may be between to 20 and 100%. There is no universally agreed definition, but hyperinflation usually implies over 1000% a year. So that's the fourth part, that is hyperinflation, where more than 1000%. So hyperinflation is actually not defined. So when the price changes becomes very high and very fast, that is called as hyperinflation. The value of money will be depleted, will get reduced. So we looked at types of inflation. Now we look at causes of inflation. Now there are basically five causes why inflation happens. First is monetary policy. It determines the supply of currency in the market. Excess supply of money leads to inflation, hence decreasing the value of currency. Whatever is the policy regarding supply of money, okay, if the government is stopping the money to be given to the public, okay, that is having controlling the money. If you give a lot of money outside in the market, inflation will increase and the value of currency will decrease. That is monetary policy. Monetary policy is determined by the Reserve Bank of India in India, central bank everywhere in the world. Fiscal policy, it monitors the borrowing and spending of economy. Higher borrowings result in increased taxes and additional currency printing to repay the debt. So fiscal policy is related to financial policies. It depends upon the borrowing and spending of the economy. So higher borrowing will result in higher taxes and additional currency to be printed to repay the debt. Then there is demand pull inflation, increases in prices due to gap between demand and supply. So recently we've been having demands of some vegetables very high. That is called as demand pull. People want more of onions. People want more of coriander. So that is why this is the demand pull. Then there is cost push. Higher prices of goods and services due to increased cost of production. When the cost of production rises, ultimately the prices will have to be raised. Suppose I have produced onions at let's say 20 rupees per kg. I will sell it for 40-50 rupees per kg. But if the cost of producing onions is itself 40 rupees per kg, the price will go up 70%, 80%. So that is called as cost push. The next is exchange rates. Now exposure to foreign markets are based on dollar value. Fluctuations in exchange rate have an impact on rate of inflation. Suddenly if the value of rupee starts falling, we get depreciation in the value of rupee, we'll see the prices will go high because so many of our commodities are imported from outside. These were the causes of inflation. Now we talk about effects of inflation. What will happen if inflation is there? Because of inflation, economic growth will be stopped. Inflation could further lead to increase in costs due to workers' demand to increase wages to meet inflation. This might increase unemployment. So unemployment will increase, and companies will start removing people from their jobs. Domestic products might become less competitive if inflation within the country is higher. It can weaken the currency of the country. Our currency value will get reduced. What are the methods of controlling the inflation? Change in monetary policy. Decide how much money to distribute and not. Okay, decide the policies. Change the interest rates. Reduce the interest rates. Allow people to borrow more money at lower interest rates. Control the money supply. That is close the link between money supply and inflation. So money supply, if you reduce the money supply, automatically inflation will come under control. Supply side policies. So bring competition among people, bring competition among good companies. Let companies make more products at cheaper rates. Fiscal policy, reduce the income tax. Okay, it'll or maybe increase the income tax. So if you increase the income tax, spendings will reduce, so demand will reduce, and automatically inflation will become normal. Control the wages, because people, when the inflation rises, people don't have money, so they want more salary. So you reduce the wages, control the wages. These are the ways to control inflation. So we have discussed about demand pull inflation is the upward pressure on the prices that follows a shortage in supply. Suddenly there is a shortage in supply, a condition that economists describe as too many dollars chasing too few goods. So where we are talking about an upward pressure on the prices, suddenly there is shortage of supply. I just spoke about vegetables or oil or anything. So there's a shortage, that is called as demand pull. What is the causes? Yeah, a growing economy. When people buy more and more stuff, when consumers feel confident, they spend more and take more on debt. This leads to steady increase in demand, which means higher prices. So when people buy more and more products, demand pull inflation is possible. Asset inflation, a sudden rise in exports forces an undervaluation of currencies involved. So if you see that more and more exports are being done, then our value of the currency gets down, and that's why we have a demand pull inflation. Government spends more freely and the prices go up, so that is why demand inflation comes into picture. Companies may increase their prices in expectation of inflation, then so companies automatically rise their prices thinking that inflation will hit. Before that only we should be ready with that new price, and there is more money supply in the system. That's why demand pull inflation happens. When there's more money to be given to the public, okay, if you get more money at a lower rate of interest, you will spend money, and then automatically the prices will rise and there'll be a demand pull inflation. Just a moment. Yeah, we just have a few things to discuss. That is cost push inflation. We discussed, as the cost will rise, automatically the inflation will come into picture. Causes rising oil prices. Now, right now we are facing this cost push inflation. Wages are increasing. Um, Import prices are increasing. Food and energy prices are increasing. Uh, Taxes are increasing, like GST is high, 18%. So this will create cost push inflation. Okay, then we discussed about deflation. Deflation means sudden reduction in the price. It's the opposite of inflation. Okay, it is called deflation. So, so deflation is a persistent and considerable amount of reduction in the price of goods and services in economy over a period of time. Monetary policy, fall in demand and technology. So central bank may reduce money supply. They will not give money supply in the market. Rate of interest will increase, and that is how deflation might come into picture. Fall in demand. Suddenly people don't need goods. Like right now in COVID situation, people don't need goods. Technology, if you have more technology, the prices will be reduced, and deflation will be under control. What are the effects? With deflation, growth of economy goes down. uh, there is very less investment. People can purchase more with less money. It can also bring a recession. How to control? You have better monetary policy, give out more money in the market. uh, Interest rates should be reduced. Changes should be done in taxes. uh, Taxation rate should be reduced. So these are the benefits or methods how we can improve deflation. What is stagflation? Stagflation is a period of rising inflation but falling output and rising unemployment. Stagflation is often caused by rise in the price of commodities such as oil. Stagflation occurred in 1970s following the tripling in the price of oil. A degree of stagflation occurred in 2008 following the rise in price of oil and start of global recession. Um, so this is a stagnant position where there is a inflation is rising, but goods are not being produced. More people are getting unemployed. That is called as stagflation. Why? Basically, it happens because of rise in oil prices, food prices, um, import impact of devaluation because of higher import prices, higher taxes. All these things are the causes. What are the measures? Again, it will come down to monetary policy. Okay, so you have to reduce your dependency on oil, go to alternative energy like solar energy and all that, and increase the interest rates. Central bank should, keep the interest rates low. Only then stagflation can be brought under control. So with this, we end our session for today, and I'll just quickly run through what we have discussed in this particular chapter. So we have spoken about inflation overall. What is the meaning of inflation? What are the types? Creeping, walking, running, galloping, hyper. What are the causes? We saw effects. We saw how to control inflation. Then we learned about demand pull inflation and the causes, cost push inflation and the causes. We learned at what is deflation and what is the effects and control mechanism for deflation. Then we learned what is stagflation, what are the causes of stagflation, and what are the measures of stagflation. So this is where we are done. So we have gone through a couple of topics today. We learned what is money and we learned what is inflation. So thank you so much for patiently listening. I'll catch you up in the next session. Take care. Bye bye.